So I went to the Instagram so I can read to you what people wrote for movies that they're trying to find and see if any of this sounds familiar at all to you. Here's one. You ready?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Okay, it's an early 90s movie. A guy with long hair and an eye patch looked kind of like Snake Plissken from Escape of New York.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this guy is in a locked up spaceship or something. He breaks out, flies to Earth, and he says it's kind of like Friday the 13th. The guy is in a wooded area like Camp Crystal Lake with a cabin that has a group of teenagers or adults staying in it. Says, I believe a handful of people get killed in the woods, but I don't remember if it showed who did the killing. Towards the end, a robot girl, I believe with a mohawk, space bounty hunter or something, appears to kill and take the guy back to outer space. I remember feeling like he was a good guy throughout the movie, but the robot girl had a gunfight. She shoots and kills him with a laser gun. Then at the end of the movie, it shows a scene of the guy's dad in space trying to kill the captain of the spaceship and ends up getting stabbed with a sword at the end. And he says it's an 80s or 90s sci-fi horror flick.
80s or 90s? Doesn't sound even remotely familiar.
I know. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, I want to watch it.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it's not one of those things where it's actually part of a series. Because a lot of times I've noticed when people do these, the answer ends up being an episode out of an anthology rather than a movie. Because those are much harder. If you haven't seen it, you're just not going to know. Let me see here.
It doesn't sound familiar. Sorry, I can't place that one.
Yeah, me neither.
Although I wonder if it might be just a bit of a stretch, but I wonder if it might be Masters of the Universe from like 86 or 87, and whoever is writing it up has kind of combined a couple of characters together.
It's possible.
Because you had Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, and he had like long, thick hair, and then there was a villain who had an eye patch.
Okay.
And parts of it did take place in a wooded area, and it was something that they were from, obviously from another planet, and there were laser gunfights. So I'm wondering if maybe...
The thing is, there was, like, especially in the 80s, there was so many of those no-budget, like, fantasy and, like, direct-to-video movies that it's like, dude, this guy could have seen one of 1,000.
Yeah.
and like, mashed them together.
And there's so many of them that have not been seen since those initial releases.
And some of them, too, like, some you would have never heard of, that never seen a release since VHS. It's like, you read the synopsis, it's like, this movie sounds fucking incredible. Like, where is this thing? You watch it, and it's actually
where is it?
shit, but...
Yeah. It's like the writer of the synopsis is much better than the movie maker.
Yeah. They had a great marketing team.
So that was from Dynamite Denton.
Dynamite Denton. Try Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren.
Right? That would be awesome if that was it, by the way.
Right?
Okay, here's another one. This is from Danny Sinclair. It says, I've been looking...
Sinclair. Wait, is that Danny Sinclair who does the Jack in the Boxes?
Yes. Yes,
nice.
It is.
Okay.
That's funny. Okay.
That is funny. Let's go. Okay, Danny Sinclair, what do you got?
I've been looking for this movie, and I don't think I'll ever find it, but it's absolutely brutal. And the first time I saw this movie was on regular daytime or possibly evening mainstream TV. Anyways, I saw this movie in about 1990, 1991. It started off with an elderly woman, late 50s, who had hired a detective to find 4 or 5 different men whom she wanted to get revenge on. When the detective gave her the information, she pulled out a gun and told the detective to open his mouth. Then she said, wider. Then she put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger.
Oh my God.
This is all on regular TV, he has in parentheses. Another death she inflicted was on an old guy in the bathtub. She drowned him in the bathtub, then threw in an electric heater or possibly a toaster. And then another death was full on. when some guy had been knocked unconscious, had his mouth duct taped so that he couldn't scream, and when he woke up, his hands and feet were bound, and he had a noose around his neck and tied to the underside of an elevator shaft. So when someone enters the elevator and goes to the floors above, the poor guy under the elevator goes up as well and ends up getting hanged. That's all I remember from the movie. And it is not I Spit on Your Grave, and it's not Dirty Harry or Sudden Impact, because there are movies that always pop up when I try to find this movie.
Hmm. Wow, sounds like an intense movie.
I know, I want to see that movie.
Yeah. That the one problem I'm having is Denny Sinclair is in Australia, so I'm wondering if this was an Australian movie that we may never have seen. Because it may never have made it here.
It is possible.
But whatever that movie is, that sounds like it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm still looking for it though. I don't know that one. To find it because there's so much.
Sounds like
there's so much detail. Got to be able to find it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still looking for it. Okay, this is from 12-inch Pianist. What?
Oh God, I love that. That's brilliant.
It says, okay, so back in the day, I had a gore mixtape on VHS, just clips from video nasties and horror flicks with a looped heavy metal soundtrack. I identified all but one clip. A woman with her blouse ripped open is chained by the wrist to a cave wall. A group of men enter dressed in clan druid-style white robes, and one of them chops her hand off with an axe. And we see the severed hand still swinging in the shackle. Absolutely no idea what it's from. It's haunted me for years.
That sounds really familiar. I really feel like I have seen that, and I feel like I've just rewatched it recently too. Like within the last 5 years, anyway.
Oh wow!
Because it sounds really, really familiar, and that portion of it, I think it's either like in the opening of the movie or it's a flashback sequence somewhere in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
It might be the second Warlock movie, Warlock the Armageddon. Mm-hmm. Maybe. Because the opening of that movie takes place in the Dark Ages, right around like a Stonehenge sort of setup. And there is a woman chained to a stone, and I believe her hand gets cut off. I could be wrong. Or possibly Beowulf from if it's from the 90s, then it's probably a little too late for what he's looking for.
Yeah.
It might be Warlock. I'm iffy on it, but it might be Warlock.
That could be Warlock 3, actually. Because I do remember seeing it in a cave.
It could be that one too. Yeah, me too. Like I think I've seen it twice. And the second time I watched it, I got about halfway in and I realized, oh wait, I watched this before and didn't like it the first time either.
Oh no.
The only reason I even watched it was because I bought the Blu-ray. So.
Yeah, well, and I bought it because I had to have the complete set.
Yeah, exactly.
That was pretty much it. Plus, Ashley Lawrence is in it, and as much as I like to say Ashley Lawrence can't do any wrong, she kind of did a little bit
wrong. Yeah,
did a little bit wrong. Not her fault. She didn't write it. Hopefully, she got paid well for it.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good guess. All right, here's one from Sandro Brizzo. When I was a kid, I watched a gruesome 80s horror flick where the camera shot was moving down from the first floor at night in a typical U.S. home, and while the TV downstairs keeps flickering with creepy white noise, the camera is getting close to the TV chair where the father of the house was supposed to be sitting. When the camera was slowly closing in on the face of the father, you saw a gruesome creature or alien sitting there without a mouth. Anybody knows this movie?
That's another one that sounds really familiar, and That feels like it's part of an anthology series.
I can agree with that because it reminds me of Twilight Zone the movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say it really feels like something out of like a creep show movie. I know it's not one of the creep shows, but it feels like something out of something similar to that.
Right.
And the era would be about right if it was in, he said, early to mid '80s. Then because there were a lot of anthology type things, but there was a lot of horror anthology on late night TV that was like actual TV series. So it may also have been an episode of something like that, like Tales from the Crypt or um, Freddy's Nightmares or anything like that from that general era.
Right. Okay, here's one from Girlinium Falcon.
Nice.
Right? Just, okay, saw this in the mid to late 80s when I was a wee kiddo. Possibly a haunted house movie of some sort, multiple deaths, and the lone surviving female winds up carried away by the devil, who is invisible, and doing it in the sky while he flies off with her. All you see is the silhouette of the gyrating lady being carried through the night sky. Then the credits roll. Can't remember what it's called for the life of me.
Nope, that one doesn't sound familiar at all.
Probably one of those obscure ones that really you only came on TV. I don't even, because those kind of movies, if they ended up on VHS, it was a very limited release.
Yeah, exactly. One of the big problems, especially with the horror stuff from the '80s, is there was such a massive amount of it that a lot of it is just lost now.
Oh yeah, I can
because
agree
they were
with that.
very very small releases, and a lot of the studios have gone out of business. That they may have produced one or two, mid budget to low budget movies. The studios are gone, so the rights to these things are just completely up in the air.
Right. Here's another one. Okay, this one's from Dead End Lane.
Dead End Lane.
hmm This cop gets into this blood sport type fighting in a cage, but the audience gets to choose the weapons for the opponents. And the main villain is called the Blade Master, I think. And he looks like Ultimate Warrior. I used to watch this a lot on Cinemax when I was younger.
I feel like I used to watch that a lot when I was younger too.
Right?
Yeah, like that sounds so familiar. You know what? It probably fell in that period again in the '80s where like if it wasn't a horror movie, it was an action movie.
Right.
And there were so many of those underground action movies through the '80s and '90s, but that one sounds really familiar. I can't place it though.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like I probably watched it on cable TV whenever I was at my grandmother's place or something like that because she had cable when I was a kid and we didn't.
hmm
So it feels like something that probably would have been on regularly and probably late at night, and I watched it either from like a midpoint to the end or from the somewhere near the beginning to the middle, and it was I don't think it was ever anything I watched all the way through.
Right.
But I feel like I've watched it multiple times before.
Yeah. One.
Blade Master.
That's a good hint, though.
That is because there was a movie in 1982 called The Blade Master,
Right.
but it looks like it's a Conan type movie, so it's a barbarian fantasy sort of movie.
hmm But if we're talking about a cop, that's not
Yeah.
it.
So that's clearly not it.
Right. And here's one. I found it hard, not because it was hard, but there are so many movies with kids and mummies. I found it a little too generic to be able to be helpful with this one. This is from Know the Chud. I have no idea if this is movie or TV show, but it was about a group of kids being stalked by a mummy. All I remember, the main character's parents left the house and they had a party, and a little girl was hiding in a stall. No idea what it was because I was too afraid to watch it with my cousins.
Nice. I can't think of that one either. That again sounds like it might have been something that was part of an anthology.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe maybe a Halloween anthology, or again, maybe an episode of like Tales from the Crypt or something, depending on when it was and how old the person who posted it is.
Okay, here's one. Here's another one from Freaky Days.
Freaky Dave.
Days. D-A-Z-E.
Oh, Days, not
Yeah.
Dave. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Freaky Days. I heard Dave. My bad.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of a horror movie with two backpacker girls. I suppose playing somewhere in South America. They released a little bird on a market pretty much at the beginning. I can't remember the whole story, but it left in my mind like it was worth watching again. Anyone a clue?
Two backpacker girls in South America. See, the only thing I can think of is the second Hostel movie, but I don't remember if they've released a bird.
Yeah, you gotta figure that's gonna be really important because he remembers it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it has to be. It's it's either a very important plot point later, or it was the best visual in the entire movie, and that's why it sticks in his head.
Well, it could have been like the very beginning, like before the credits. You know how they'll do that.
Yeah, exactly. Or as the credits are rolling, this is what you're seeing.
Yeah. But that's another one that might not have enough to really figure out. Because, backpacker girls in a slasher is pretty standard fare.
Yeah,
Especially
unless it
traveling
was, it could also, if they're in the jungle, it could have been one of those like 70s cannibal movies of which there were a plethora.
Oh, yeah. Or like it could have been Turistas. The Turistas Go Home, whatever they call that. But I don't remember anybody releasing a bird.
Yeah. Because it sounds like if they're releasing a bird, it sounds like it starts in like a marketplace or a bazaar or something like that.
Right.
And, this bird is in the cage, so they pop the cage open and they let the bird free.
Right.
And then they go off and they do whatever it is that backpacker girls in South America do.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
and
if it's a horror movie, is probably getting killed.
Right. And it's not necessarily in South America. You just think that maybe it's South America.
Yeah.
What was funny is when I first read that, the first thing I thought of was a movie that's not even a horror movie, but it had two backpacker girls. They ended up going to prison. I think it's called Broke Down Palace.
Broke Down Palace, yeah, with Claire Danes and whoever the other girl was.
That movie was amazing and sad.
Was it Kate Beckinsale was the other girl?
Might have been, actually.
All I remember is Claire Danes because she was like front and center on the DVD box.
Right. That was such a good movie. It was so sad.
Mm-hmm.
But come on, man. Somebody offers you a dream. All you have to do is no.
Yeah.
Just fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got that series that also I love, Locked Up Abroad.
Yep.
Love that show. I don't know why. I think it's because a lot of these people will break out and find their way home.
Mm-hmm.
And then those countries are like, oh, well.
Mm-hmm.
I think only one time did one actually make it home. And then she went outside to law enforcement there to pick her up. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Oh,
why would you do that? You're just going to get extradited.
But a lot of them don't. Those countries are like, well, good riddance, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the thing is, especially if you're in a poorer country, they don't want to take care of you.
Right. And it's not that they didn't deserve to be locked up because most did, but if I'm honest, if I ever go to prison, I'm going to spend every single day trying to escape. I don't like cages, being locked up, and especially when it's life. Well, you already have life. It can't get worse than that.
Exactly. And especially in, some of these, like if you're in a prison in Thailand, like you don't want to be there.
Oh, man.
You don't want to be there. It's horrible. It's nasty. Don't go to, if you go to Thailand, don't go to prison.
Oh my God. Terrible. Especially roaches in the rice.
Yeah.
The sewage, the sewer and the shower is the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Not my idea of a good time.
No thanks. I think I solved the rest of The rest of them I can't say were easy. It just so happened I'd seen them or knew what they
Mm-hmm.
were talking about. Like this one, Asian 117. I saw a movie of two friends who are dead on Halloween and they attend some kind of costume party so no one knows they're dead. That was easy. Idle hands.
Yep, Seth Green and I think Jessica Alba's in that too.
Yeah. Here's another one, but there's so little I couldn't figure it out. From, I'm gonna butcher this name, Mattia Darko Bateman says, I think it was made for TV in the mid 90s. A young man who kills his parents and the trial afterwards. I forget the name.
A young man who kills his parents, and it's you know what? It sounds like it's one of those made for TV,
Hmm.
true life story, um, whatever movie of the week things.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And he said,
Yeah.
I asked if he was adopted or anything. He says, wasn't adopted. The young man was about to get married and he had a brother. The brother convinces the judge at the end for life in prison, not the death penalty. That's immediately what I thought was Lifetime movie.